Hey everyone, welcome back to another segment of The MCR. Mac and me. My name's TJ. In this segment, I'd like to talk about another story, a little bit of old news, but I watched a roundtable discussion, or I should say, portion of a roundtable discussion. It was on YouTube. It was a Daily Wire roundtable discussion.
Now, is that Ben Shapiro's group?
Yeah, Ben Shapiro, okay. Matt Walsh, Mike Knowles, and then there was an older gentleman. I forget his first name, but his last name is Clavin. Okay. And they were saying some interesting thoughts and whatnot. And well, anyways, this Daily Wire roundtable brought up some very interesting points. And they were just kind of speculations, that they were theories and speculations, and I love to theorize, so I became all ears when I started hearing their thoughts. But, just for point of reference, and it involved the fire in Hawaii, Lahaina, and this fire started August 8th. So yeah, this is a few weeks after the fact, okay? But, August 8th, and I have read a news article that gave somewhat of a timeline, and I guess they determined that the beginning of the fire was at around 6:40 a.m. And even though Hawaii wasn't under a hurricane watch, they were still getting strong winds from they say passing nearby hurricane. So they had strong winds, okay? And I guess the strong winds blew down the power lines, and so began this horrible fire. And I'm going to tell you this right off the bat. When I started hearing reports about the devastation, my first thought was, this is something you hear about in a third world country. Yeah. You know? I mean, this is a lot of people got killed.
Well, Hawaii is a very, very, very blue state, so it might be very much like a third world country by now.
Well, that what you just said led me to something that I reflect on. I hear Dan Bongino say a lot, when are people going to change their mind, how they vote? Well, perhaps when it gets bad enough. And not that you want to wish ill on really anyone. You'd at the same time wonder, well, is it bad enough now? And the reason why I say all this is when I after listening to the Daily Wire roundtable and hearing the news reports, it sounded like the, pardon the pun, perfect storm of incompetence. I mean,
what did they cite reasons why they thought what the incompetence was that led to the death of so many people? Because I did hear one particular thing that piqued my interest, although I did not get into the story.
Well, for one thing, because they wanted to keep Hawaii's nature pristine, there was the accusation of they didn't clear away debris from the power lines. So when they fell on dry vegetation. Also, and this just blows my mind, and this takes me to what I heard in the roundtable discussion. There was what they call the Lahaina Pass, one way in, one way out to this. It sounds like a decent sized little village or town of sorts. It sounds like a good few thousand live there. Okay. Well, because of the power lines being fallen down, and to include across the road, the police were turning people around, sending them back, telling them to shelter in place, which you could almost think of as a death sentence. Now, in the Daily Wire, the one guy says, and I can't remember who said this, but the one guy says the only ones who survived were the ones who disobeyed the police. In other words, people are like, screw you, I'm getting out of here. Those were the ones that survived. The other ones that were like, oh, you're telling me to turn around? Okay, I'll go home and shelter in place. Those are the ones who died. And uh, and I guess I didn't realize this fire was so bad until I heard news reports of people literally, physically running into the ocean water to get away from the flame, ultimately having to be rescued by the Coast Guard.
Well, they were lucky they had that option, I would say, or blessed that
Yeah,
they had
well,
that option.
yeah, and I got to tell you, a lot of people may not know this about me, but I did spend a month fighting forest fires when I was in the Army, and they told us when a fire is out of control, you ain't outrunning it, And we had
Right.
those little shelter fire tents that we kept on our packs, Yeah, they're lucky. These people who survived, they're lucky they had the option of fleeing to the ocean to escape the flame. Uh,
And even
but
then, the smoke can get you.
yeah, one of the saddest parts to the story is it sounds like a lot of the people who died are children. And you wonder, well, gee, how is it so many children died? Well, it was a school day. The schools shut, when the power went out, the schools shut down. The schools shut down, they sent the children home. The children go home, the parents are still at work who haven't made it home yet, okay? And so these children are home alone, and it sounds like a fair number of them died from the fire alone.
Well, one of
And
the story I heard, and I'm hesitant to even bring it up because I don't have the particulars, but there was a story about the police chief having no practical or very little emergency management training, and that he was basically got hired because he's so woke, because that's so important now in blue areas, that 14 other people who had the training and might have done something completely different weren't hired because we had to hire the woke guy.
well, and I did hear something like that also as to the accuracy of it. I won't say emphatically one way or another, but
Right.
what I also heard was as far as any kind of immediate response, it sounds like they were having trouble getting water because of the whole conservation stupidity stuff, you know, and that's why I said this is the perfect storm of incompetence, you
Well,
know.
when you mentioned earlier they wanted to keep it pristine around the power lines, it's already not pristine because you have the power lines there. So there's no common sense. It's more of this woke utopianism, and it's costing. Woke kills, basically. I'll just
Well,
put it that way. Woke is killing people.
and if all this wasn't bad enough, then you got the Hawaiian governor saying it's all because of climate change, and I
And
just
I would love to know how he came to that determination in such a short amount of time.
well, and that idiotic statement takes me back to the famous Rahm Emanuel who said you never let a crisis go to waste. And what I mean by that is it's an opportunity to do things you could not do before. So we're gonna let this fire destroy a community just so we can implement more climate change crap. You know,
Right.
I just and did you see? I saw snippets of a press conference with the mayor of Lahaina. Did you see that, Mac?
I have not seen it, no.
Okay. Reporters were pressing the mayor for a body count, and he wouldn't give it. He wouldn't give a body count, death toll. The suspicion is because so many during the press conference, the mayor of Lahaina was asked what the body count was. He didn't want to give a body count because he knew so many of the people who died in the flame were children, and to give a body count would indicate a fair number, of an approximate number of how many children perished in the flames. So
How many children were sacrificed at the altar of woke?
And I've said this once already, but as I started hearing more and more about this fire, I thought, my gosh, this is the type of stuff you hear happening in Central America or some African country,
Right.
I mean, and here's something the Daily Wire said. While we don't have an exact death toll, uh, there was like 800 or 900 people that were listed as being unaccounted for. Doesn't mean they're dead, but you know what? They're unaccounted. Okay. Do you realize? And this is what they said in the Daily Wire roundtable. He goes, do you realize you're approaching 1/3 of the death toll of 9/11? If that's true, if that unaccounted for figure holds, okay, you're getting close to 1/3 the nine. Well, you know what? You could say 1/4 of the death toll of 9/11, and that, you know what? You talk about putting things in perspective, you know.
Right.
I mean, I knew it was bad, and then I see how bad it really was.
Well, they would rather save trees than people, and in this case, they didn't save either.
And now you've got, and I guess Lahaina was heavily dependent on tourism. That's ruined for an indeterminate amount of time now. You know, uh, they say it looks like a bomb went off at the city. They're not even sure if or how long it'll take for this community to rebuild. And it's just for something that devastating. It blows my mind. Okay, and that's all I got. That's all I got for this one. I mean, got a third world event happening in a first world country.
Well,
What we got going on.
I'll repeat myself. I doubt many are listening at this point. But woke kills.
Yeah, and to quote Dan Bongino, until it's bad enough, people won't vote differently. So I don't know. We'll see what if anything becomes of all this. That's all I got. Thanks everyone. Catch you in the next segment. As always, be safe, watch your six, and don't tread on me.